Hey guys, and welcome back. So in this video, what I'm going to be doing is showing you how to deploy a Python server client system to the internet so that you can play from anywhere. Now what I mean by this is essentially any program you've created using sockets and maybe you're running it through your local network. Now you actually want to deploy it to the internet so that anyone can play from any computer around the world. Well, how do you go about doing that? Now, the first thing is you actually can do this on your host computer. So whatever computer you're working on, your main one, you can set it up so that deploys the game and you can play from anywhere. But that's usually not a good idea because that means you're kind of leaking your IP address and allowing people to connect to your machine and your home network, which is usually just not the best practice and safest idea. So what we're going to be doing in this video is showing you how to set up a very basic headless server, which is just going to be used by like a cloud provider. In this case, we're going to use Linode, and I actually have a free $20 credit to give you guys, which will allow you to use this for about 4 months for free. So I'm going to be showing you how we can do this, which just means kind of working in Linux and Ubuntu, how we can transfer some files over, and how to just get everything set up and running smoothly. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with this video, and we need to download a few things before we can really move into anything else. So the first thing that we're going to need is PuTTY. Now, this is going to be our SSH client, which is going to allow us to connect to our server, which, we obviously don't have right in front of us, and do some things with it. So log in, add the Python script, run some stuff, see some output, all of that. So download PuTTY, the link is right here, and there'll be a link in the description if you want to just click that to get to that. The next thing we're going to download is called WinSCP. This is a very basic file transfer protocol, or I guess you could call it client maybe. You could use FileZilla, any other kind of file transfer protocol that you want, but I just like using this one because it's really basic, really straightforward. So go ahead and download this. And it's not very big as well. It's only 9.4 gigabytes. So once we have those two, what we're going to do is set up a really basic minimal server on Linode. Now again, I am partnered with Linode. I actually don't get paid if you guys sign up for this. I don't really care if you use it or not, but you can have a $20 credit and you can use this for 4 months for free. So if you just want to mess with this, you might as well, just take the credit, sign up and use it. So to do this, there's a link in the description, but you can just go to linode.com/techwithtim, or you can use the code TWT19. That'll give you $20 off. So I'm going to click to deploy my Linode server. Now for you guys, what's going to happen is it's probably going to tell you need to create an account. So do that, and then it should give you $20 credit. And if for some reason it doesn't work, just type in that code TWT19. Now once we're here to set up a Linode, which is just going to be our server, we're going to click on create, and then we're going to click on Linode. Now for this purpose, what we're going to do is select our OS, and in this case, I'm going to choose some version of Ubuntu. So I'm just going to pick the most recent version of Ubuntu. It doesn't really matter which one you pick so long as you know how to work with it. All right, for our location, I'm closest to Toronto, so I'm going to select that. And then for our plans, we're actually going to go to Nanode and select this $5 plan. Now, you guys can use the $10 plan if you want, or the $20 plan, but if you want this to last for as long as possible, just pick the $5 plan. That's the cheapest one that they have. Now for this label, I'm just going to call this tutorial because I am going to delete this after. And then we need to select a root password, which we need to remember because that's what we're going to use every time we sign in. So I'm just going to make my password 1234. You guys can make it whatever you'd like. All right, so now that we have that, that's pretty much all we need to do. And we can just go ahead and click create. Now I got to choose a better password. Okay, so let's do another password, which I'm not going to tell you guys what it is. Okay, so there we go. We've created a password. I don't need to save that. And now it's going to take a second and set up our Linode. And once that's done, I'll be right back and we can move into the next steps. All right, so our Linode is up and running now. You can see that by the fact that it says running. And if you want to restart it or power it down, you can click this. Now, I'd recommend when you guys aren't using this, if you want to save your credits, just stop this because the $5 a month assumes that you're running it consistently for 30 days of each month or whatever it is. So if you actually stop running it, then you'll only get charged by the hour. So you get charged like, I don't know, 0.75 cents per hour, something really small. So, you could technically use this for a really long time if you only use it for a few hours at a time. Okay, so now that we have that, we actually need to go here to the networking tab of our Linode. We need to look for this IP address here. So mine is 172.105. Oh, sorry, not that one. We need to actually look for the SSH IP address, which is 172.105.4.10. Now this IP address here, I'll zoom in a bit so you guys can see it, where the SSH access is what we're actually going to use to access our computer from PuTTY. So this again is just like a computer running in the cloud. It exists somewhere, but we don't have access to it. So we need to SSH into it so that we can actually control it and start doing some things. So we're gonna go ahead and open up PuTTY here, like this. Now I'll zoom in on this so you guys can see it. But what we're gonna do is create a new kind of profile, I guess, in PuTTY and set this up so we can access our server. So what I'm gonna do is take that IP address, so that 172 that I have, and I'll just paste it right in here. Now, where it says save sessions, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna type, I guess like tutorial, like that, and go ahead and hit save. Now what this is going to do is actually save this IP address and this port number 22, it's fine to leave it like that, into a profile called tutorial. So now every time when you load PuTTY, rather than having to type this in, you can just select tutorial and hit load, and it will load that profile. Now I usually like to just make my text size a bit bigger too. So what I do, so to do that, we're going to go to appearance, we're going to go to change, and I'm just going to change that font size to 20 just so I can actually read it, because otherwise it's very small. So anytime we make a change, we need to resave this change. So since tutorials right here is save sessions, we'll hit save again, and now that'll save that in the tutorial profile, and we can load it by just, hitting load again. Okay, so now that we have that, all we're going to do is go ahead and hit open. Now when we hit open, it's going to bring up this warning, which you guys can see here, security breach. Just go ahead and hit yes. That's not a huge deal at all. And what we're going to do for the login is we're going to type root. Now root is your main user, and that's the default user that comes with your, I guess, Ubuntu server. So hit root. This will be the same for all of you. And for your password, you're going to type in that password you created when we created the Linode. So I'll type in my password. It's not going to show up on the screen. You just have to type it and hit enter. Okay, so now we have the server. You can see kind of some information here. So it says like the memory, usage, all of that. I'll show you a really cool trick if you want to see kind of all of the things that are running on your server and you just want to look cool. Go ahead and type htop, and that actually brings up kind of like the task manager for your server. So say you're not sure, how much memory you put in or how many CPUs you have. Well, you can just look here and it'll tell you kind of what's being used, and you can go through all of this stuff here and look at all the processes that are running on the right side of the screen. That's useful because sometimes you need to kill processes, and I'll show you how to kill one without actually killing it. So for example, htop is a process that's running. You can see the command. So if I hit F9, that stands for kill, and then I hit enter, it will actually kill htop and stop running that process. Okay, so now that I've showed some basic stuff here, let's just show kind of how to navigate through this server from the command line, and then we'll actually transfer some Python files over and show how we can actually get all this running. So what I'm going to do is show you a basic command, which is cd. Now cd stands for change directory. So to change directory, what you do is you type cd and then you type the name of the directory you want to change into. Now sometimes you don't know what directories are available to move into. So to see this, what you're going to type is ls. Now I actually don't know what that stands for, but I think it's like a list something, but anyways. That'll actually show you all of the directories that are in this directory. Now you can see here there's actually none because nothing popped up. So if this is the case, there's nothing that we can move into now. What we can actually do is type something called cd ... Now what this does is actually move us back a directory level. So say we have two folders. We have a folder called main, and then we have a folder called sub, and the folder sub is inside main. Say we're currently, in that folder sub. If we type cd ... it'll bring us into that main folder, and then we can re-navigate into other points. So it just moves you back a directory level. So if I hit that, you can see that now we change from this little squiggly line here, which I think is called like the tilde, and now we have a slash. So now if I type ls, you can see that it brings up all these different folders that are nice and color coded for us that tell us, where specific things are. Now what we typically do, actually I don't know if it's what we typically do, but what I usually do when I'm doing this is I just cd into my root directory, which is the one you default puts you in. So you go cd root, and I create a new folder. So to create a new folder, you're actually going to type mkdir, which stands for make directory, and you're going to type the name of the folder you want to create. So in this case, I'm going to say Python -server, like that. So mkdir Python server, and now if I type ls to list the directory, you can see that we have this Python server. So what I'm going to do is actually change directories into this Python server by doing cd Python-server. Now I'll show you guys a quick trick here. What you can actually do is if you have this cd and you know kind of the beginning of the name of the folder, but you don't want to type the whole thing, just start typing a few letters. So maybe just pyth, and then hit tab. and it will actually auto-complete the rest of that folder for you, assuming it knows which one you're talking about. So we can hit enter there, and now you can see we have root, which is this tilde, / Python server, and that's what we currently are. All right, so now that we're here, fortunately for us, Python is actually installed on this Linode server already. So Python 3, if you type that, it actually pops up. We already have the most recent version of Python. But you may need to install Python by doing like sudo apt-get and then Python 3 or whatever it is that you want. But most of these servers come with Python by default, so we don't actually need to do that. All right, guys, I'm back now. I just realized I had the wrong code up on my left side of my screen here, so I had to change that before we continued. Anyways, what I'm going to show you now is how we can actually modify the code that we've written so that it works on our new server online. This is really basic to do, but I'm just going to say quickly, if you guys don't have this code, this is just a really basic script that essentially allows you to move two little rectangles around two different screens from any computer. If you don't have this and you want to mess with it, I'll leave a zip file down below so you can download this code, but this will work with any kind of socket program you've written. So if you followed any of my other tutorials with online games, this should work for you. Okay, so what we're going to do to start is we're going to go into our server script here, which I have right here, and we're just going to make sure that whatever IP address we're binding to the socket is blank. So what I mean by that is right now you can see I have server equals 192.168.1.1. I'm just going to delete that and leave this as a blank string. So now when I bind the server, it binds to a blank string. And what that means is just bind to any available IP address, which will end up binding to the actual server itself. And that will be a better way of doing this. So anyways, now that we have that, what we need to do is go into our other file where we actually connect to the socket, which I believe is network, at least for me it is. And we need to change the host or whatever we're going to be connecting to actually be the IP address of this server. So in this case, the IP address is 172.105.4.10. So I'm going to change this host attribute here to be that. Make sure this is formatted correctly. And that's all we need to do is just change those IP addresses around, and we should actually be good and ready to go. Now, some people say, oh, you got to do port forwarding, you got to do all this. You don't necessarily need to do that. It kind of depends on what program you're running. In our case, we don't need to do any port forwarding, and that's a more advanced thing that I'm not going to talk about here. Okay, so now that we've done all that, what we need to do now, and this is kind of the only thing, is take this server file, transfer it to our server, and then run the file. And then we can run clients from wherever we want and connect to them. So how do we do that? Well, what we're going to do is open up WinSCP, which is going to be our file transfer client, I guess. And we're going to create a new site by hovering over new site here. And we're going to go ahead and type in a host name of, in this case, whatever the IP address of our server is. So 172.105.4.10. We're going to type in the username as root, because that's the username we're going to log in with, and the password as whatever that root password is. And we're going to go ahead and hit save here and save this as whatever you want. You can leave that IP address. I'm just going to save this as tutorial server like that. Go ahead and hit OK. And then it might pop up this thing saying oh, there's this security issue. Just hit yes, it's fine. It doesn't really matter. And then we can go ahead, hover over this and click login. Now it's going to ask you for the password again. So just type it in and hit enter or hit OK. All right, so now that we're there, we can actually see it brings up our Python server here, and we can actually navigate into there. I have this PyCache file. I'm going to delete that. You guys won't have that file just because I was messing with something. But anyways, that's how we kind of navigate through our actual server is on here. So if I go back a directory, you can see now we're outside of that root directory. And if I want to go back, I can select root and then Python server. It's just like navigating through any kind of Windows file system, except now you have a nice little client to do it for. So the way this works is kind of your computer's on the left side, the server's on the right side, and to transfer stuff over, you can just drag and drop, but you can also just drag and drop from like a Windows Explorer like this. You can just drag it right in, which is exactly what we're going to do. So what I'm going to look for now actually is my code here. So I'm going to find the directory that's in, and I'm just going to drag whatever server files I need onto the server. Now I'm not going to put any of the client files because I don't need those on there. I'm just going to put the server ones. So to do this, I'm going to find that, which is going to be challenging. But I think I know where it is. All right, so I found the files now. So what I'm going to do is just drag the server file here, as well as the game file, which is another one that I need. And now that I have these on here, all I actually need to do to run this is go on the server and run my server.py script and then connect to it from my client. Now I did this earlier and I got some error. anyways, because I was trying to test this before I actually went in. That's because I was using like the wrong server script. But anyways, ignore that. I just figured I'd mention that in case any of you guys were like confused what was going on the left side of my screen. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is actually close win SCP because we don't need that anymore. I'm going to open up Putty, which I have here. You can see I deleted the old files that weren't working, so let me just clear this. And what I'm going to do now is do ls, and you can see that we actually have these two files, so game.py and server.py. Just in case anyone's confused, just like if you saw me having all these weird things going on, just ignore that because I made a quick mistake, so I had to fix something in this video. But anyways, what we're going to do now is simply run this server script. So once we've transferred those files over, we've transferred game, we've transferred server, whatever files is we need, we're going to run python 3 server.py. Now make sure you do python 3 because if you do python, that's going to run python 2 and you're probably going to run into some errors. So let's go ahead and hit enter, and you can see now it says waiting for a connection. So now that it says this, what I'm going to do is go to my actual game here on my computer. And remember, this is a different computer. This is the actual server. And I'm going to go ahead and run my script that should connect to this. So I'm going to hit Control B, and you can see that now we get connected to, and we have this window popping up, and all of these sending and receivings are happening. Now look, I can actually move this dot around and notice that on my server, it's showing all of these things. And there's actually very little latency between the server and this client script here. Now it's hard for me to illustrate this works on a bunch of different computers, but I'm just going to run another client on this specific computer and show you guys how this works. So give me a second to actually I already have this open, so I can just go cmd and then python run.py. And now there's another one that pops up here, and you can see we have two clients, and if I move one here, it will move on the other client with a little bit of latency, but nothing that's too bad. So I mean, that is kind of how you run this. You get the server script running on the server, and you get the client scripts running on your clients. Now, I will tell you, these things are pretty finicky, and it takes kind of an expert in this field to figure out the best way to code a server and the best way to code a client so you don't get a ton of latency and lag. Like the way that I'm doing this is probably not the most efficient. This is just a really basic game that I wanted to show you and, you know, test some things out. So anyways, this is kind of how that works. This is the server, but I'm just going to show you one last thing. So I'm going to exit this by just hitting Control C. Now, the only issue that's going to occur right now is that if I actually close this Putty window, my server is going to close as well. So like these here, so they're frozen anyways because I closed this, but those will exit as well and there'll be an error. And that's because this, when I run Python 3, it runs kind of like through my display, which means if I close this, it closes this kind of terminal session and stops running that. So what we need to do to fix this is we need to actually use something called screen. Now what screen does is it detaches the process, which is that python 3 server.py, that's the process, from our computer, and it just puts it and runs it directly on the server. It's kind of hard to explain like exactly how this works, but essentially when you just run this without screen, it's attached to your kind of display, which means when you close this, it stops running on the server. But if you put screen before whatever command you run, then that means that you can essentially, you know, have that running 24/7. It doesn't matter whether or not you have this open or not. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type screen, and let's just see if this works. So screen does work, but for some of you guys, let me actually get out of this. For some of you guys, you might not have screen on your, I guess, server. So what you need to do is type sudo apt-get, I think it's -get install screen. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so that does actually work. Screen is already installed on my computer, but this will actually install screen for you so that you can use it. Okay, so now that we have screen, we're going to use screen, and then we're going to type, what am I saying, server? Python 3 server.py. Now, if you spell Python correctly, which I did not there, and you run this, then you will see that it actually runs this, and it looks like a little bit different the way that it runs it. But this now means that this is detached from our display, and this will work no matter what. So we can go ahead and connect to this again. So Control B, and you can see that we are still connected. And if I actually go ahead and close this window here, so let's close the session, and I try to move around, this still actually works. Now, if I run another one here, I think, yeah, I can just do it like that. So let's get these two Pygame windows open, and I start moving around. You can see that everything is still working fine, and doing that screen has actually fixed that for us, and everything is working. Now, the last thing I'll show you is that, you know, like when you run it with screen, well, how do you quit it afterwards? Well, to do that, we need to go back into Putty. We need to load up our tutorial again. And then what we need to do is log in like we did before. We need to type htop. We need to find this process on the side if we want to quit this server process, and we need to actually just quit it. So we're going to find the command that we type. So here it says Python 3 user unattended. So what we're going to do is, or sorry, that's not the one. It's here, Python 3 server.py. We're going to hit F9 for kill, and then we're going to hit enter, and then that will actually kill the server for us. So now that is no longer running on our machine. Now, to wrap up this video, I do need to say I do have an affiliation with Linode, and that's the reason they provided you guys with a free $20 credit that can last you 4 months to kind of test out and play with the basic level plan for a server. Now, Linode has an awesome support team, so if you guys do need help and for some reason I can't or my Discord server can't help you, you can always reach out to them and they'll be more than happy to do that. It's available 24/7, 365 days a year, and that's by online or by phone. This is kind of random, but if any of you guys live in Australia, you might be excited by this because they're actually opening a new data center in Sydney at the end of 2019, which is kind of nice because usually if you live in Australia, I know that like server companies and internet providers don't really mess with it just because of its location in the world. But that's nice, and that's going to be, I think, their 11th data center that they have. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Definitely sign up and take advantage of this free credit. There's no obligation. You don't have to pay for anything. And I mean, just go ahead, take it and use it.